Imagine staring into a bathroom mirror, pulling out a protractor, and literally calculating the exact geometric angle of your eyelids to determine your social worth.
I mean, just doing actual math on your own face, it's wild.
It sounds like a dystopian science fiction novel, right?
Yeah.
But today, it is a massive, highly structured internet subculture, and it's called Looksmaxxing.
Yeah, it's definitely everywhere right now.
It really is. So if you're listening and you've been hearing this term floating around, maybe you've noticed your younger relatives suddenly talking about their jawlines on TikTok, or, maybe you're just endlessly fascinated by how the internet shapes human behavior. We're decoding the entire phenomenon for you today.
Absolutely.
Our source material for this deep dive is a really comprehensive Wikipedia article that details the history, the practices, and the criticisms of the whole movement. And our mission today is to figure out exactly where basic healthy grooming ends and where this rigid algorithm-driven obsession actually begins.
And that's a really crucial distinction to make because, when you first encounter Looksmaxxing, it's super easy to dismiss it as just another fleeting vanity trend.
Right. Like, oh, guys are just learning how to use hair gel now.
Exactly. You think, oh, they're going to the gym, they care about skincare, what's the big deal? But when you actually dig into the mechanics of this community, it is so much more than that.
Yeah, it gets intense fast.
It does. It is a highly systemic, almost clinical framework. Physical features are traded and evaluated like a volatile stock market. It offers a very clear window into how modern social media algorithms are actively rewiring modern self-esteem and identity.
And what's wild is that this framework is not a monolith at all. The research breaks Looksmaxxing down into a spectrum, basically two main subsets, which are softmaxing and hardmaxing.
Right.
So softmaxing is the entry point. This includes the kind of basic, non-invasive habits you'd see in the pages of like GQ or Men's Health for the last 30 years.
Yeah, the completely normal stuff.
Exactly. We're talking basic skincare routines, upgrading your wardrobe, hitting the gym, getting a decent haircut, and, managing your weight.
Right. It's the traditional self-improvement advice that has been around forever. But even within that softer side, you start to see the community's preference for very niche, highly specific regimens.
Like what?
Well, for example, there's NoFap.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, which is the practice of completely abstaining from masturbation. The community believes it yields distinct physical and mental benefits, like higher testosterone or sharper focus. And then, of course, there's mewing.
Mewing. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because I have seen this all over video platforms. What exactly is happening here, mechanically speaking?
Mechanically, mewing involves consciously flattening your tongue against the roof of your mouth, like at all times.
Who's walking around like that all day?
Yeah, constantly. The underlying theory they subscribe to is that over time, this constant upward pressure will physically alter your facial structure, specifically, widening the jawline and pulling the face forward.
Wow. Does that actually work?
Well, the broader medical and orthodontic consensus generally points out that, yes, tongue posture is a real thing in dentistry, but the idea that an adult can radically reshape their bone structure just by pressing their tongue up is highly disputed.
I would imagine so.
But in the softmaxing community, it's treated as foundational gospel.
It's almost like they view the body as a piece of clay, Like you can just mold it if you apply enough pressure.
That's a great way to put it.
Which naturally brings us to hardmaxing. Because if softmaxing is like basic home maintenance mowing the lawn, maybe painting the shutters, hardmaxing sounds like tearing the house down to the studs without a permit.
Oh, totally. That analogy is spot on.
Yeah, this is the extreme end of the spectrum, and it involves incredibly invasive interventions. We're looking at the unauthorized use of steroids, peptides, and human growth hormone.
And it goes further than that, too.
Right. It includes extreme dieting
Right.
to the point of outright starvation,
Yeah.
just to hit a single-digit body fat percentage. There's skin whitening. And then there are major cosmetic surgeries. We're talking rhinoplasty, jaw surgery, and highly complex maxillofacial surgeries.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
The research even mentions the use of aromatase inhibitors.
And, what's fascinating here is we really need to pause on aromatase inhibitors to understand the extreme lengths being taken. Because medically speaking, these are serious pharmaceutical drugs.
Right.
They're often used in treatments for things like breast cancer. Their primary function is to block the body's ability to convert testosterone into estrogen.
Wait, really? Why is a perfectly healthy young man taking a breast cancer drug?
Because estrogen naturally causes the body to retain a bit of water, right, which softens the face.
Oh, I see.
So by chemically crashing their estrogen levels without any medical supervision, these young men are trying to artificially dry out their skin. They want to look more vascular, more chiseled, and more hollow in the cheeks.
That is just, wow.
Yeah, it completely bypasses the question of, is this healthy? And replaces it with, will this give me a sharper jawline? The guardrails of traditional medical ethics just vanish completely.
It's terrifying how quickly that line blurs.
It really is. The shift from wanting to eat healthier to, chemically altering your hormone profile happens incredibly fast when you're in an online community that rewards that extreme dedication.
Which raises an enormous question for me. If a guy is willing to crash his hormones, starve himself, or undergo major facial surgery, what exact architectural blueprint is he trying to follow? What is the specific metric of attraction they are chasing?
To understand the blueprint, you have to look at the highly specific language this community has invented. The entire system revolves around a concept they call sexual market value, or SMV.
SMV, I mean, it literally sounds like a Wall Street term.
It's designed to sound like one, yeah. SMV is an attempt to turn human attractiveness into a quantifiable, cold, hard number. It takes a literal rating of someone's physical appearance and combines it with a perceived social status and wealth. They are trying to turn human worth into a solvable math equation.
And the variables in that math equation are hyper-specific, aren't they? The research points to this massive obsession with something called hunter eyes.
Yes, hunter eyes.
If you're not deep in these forms, you wouldn't even know what that means. So the physical goal is to have a neutral or positive canthal tilt, meaning the outer corner of the eye tilts slightly upward.
Exactly.
And they want absolutely zero upper eyelid exposure and very low-set, heavy eyebrows. The explicit, stated goal is to resemble the eye area of a predatory animal.
It's so intense.
They want hollow cheeks, pursed lips. The research even notes guys obsessively rubbing the bone around their orbital area, trying to stimulate growth to get these hunter eyes.
The word predatory is really the key there, because the language they use is just as aggressive and hierarchical as the physical goals themselves.
How so?
Well, it's not about looking handsome, it's about looking dominant. That's why you see terms like mogging.
Mogging.
Yeah, to mog someone means to assert complete physical dominance over them based purely on your appearance. If you walk into a room and you are taller and have a sharper jawline than the guy next to you, you have mogged him.
Wow. It's just a constant, exhausting competition.
It never ends.
The research also highlights behavioral jargon, like being Y-pilled, which is a spin on the old internet concept of being red-pilled. But in this context, it means viewing yourself as biologically more masculine than the guys around you.
Right.
They even throw around the acronym AMOG, which stands for alpha male of the group. And apparently the trends are constantly evolving. Like in the 2020s, there's been a rise in smell-maxing.
Yes, smell-maxing, which is exactly what it sounds like, optimizing your scent to an extreme degree.
Right. But then there's bone smashing.
Oh, boy. Yes.
Bone smashing.
I read this in our research and had to double check that I was reading it correctly. Bone smashing is the act of deliberately hitting your own face with blunt objects.
Including actual hammers? Yes, literally hammers to create a chiseled look.
Yeah.
Now, the research does note that within the community, this is largely considered an inside joke or a meme.
Sure.
But it has spread enough that actual doctors and maxillofacial surgeons are having to go on record to actively warn the public against it.
Because people are actually trying it.
Right. They are issuing warnings about the risk of bone fractures, severe facial misalignment, neurovascular injuries, permanent deformity, and literal blindness. Wait, even as an inside joke, the fact that doctors have to actively warn against hitting your face with a hammer is wild.
It is deeply alarming.
How did we even get to a place where predatory animal eyes and hammer injuries are the gold standard?
Well, if you look at the underlying mechanics of why someone would even joke about hitting their face with a hammer, it comes back to that desperate desire for control.
The math equation again.
Exactly. There is a biological principle called Wolff's Law, which states that bones will adapt and grow stronger under stress.
Okay, that makes sense medically.
Right. But the community twists that legitimate medical concept into pseudoscience. They believe that microfracturing their face will make the bone heal back wider and more dominant.
Unbelievable.
It shows you how a hyperspecific clinical approach to attractiveness strips away all common sense. If attractiveness is just a math equation and bone mass is the variable, then in their minds, smashing the bone is just solving the equation.
That is incredibly dark. And this highly clinical, almost mathematical approach to human faces didn't just manifest out of thin air on TikTok a couple of years ago. It has very distinct origin story.
It does. To really understand where this came from, we have to trace the origins back to the 2010s. This movement was born deep inside incel, which stands for involuntary celibate and manosphere communities.
Right.
The research points specifically to 3 defunct message boards collectively known as the PSL forums. These were websites like puahate.com, sleuthhate.com, and lookism.net.
And the culture of those early PSL forums was defined by a complete, outright rejection of mainstream dating culture and any feminist perspectives.
Yeah.
Right? They viewed the dating world as completely rigged against them.
Exactly. And because they felt the system was rigged, they created their own measuring stick. That measuring stick is called the PSL scale.
Okay, let's talk about that scale.
So most of us are familiar with the casual, oh, he's a 7 out of 10 rating system. The PSL scale diverges from that entirely.
Yeah.
It is a rigorously hierarchical, brutal framework, usually operating on a scale from 1 to 8. Its only purpose was to coldly calculate male facial attractiveness, specifically to interpret how they believed women perceived men.
And this scale is inextricably linked to something called the black pill ideology. And to be very clear with you listening, our goal right now is to impartially report on the mechanics of this belief systems so you understand the foundation of the trend.
Right. We are absolutely not endorsing these viewpoints.
Exactly. We're just conveying the ideas in the source material.
Yeah.
But according to the research, the core tenet of black pill ideology is extreme biological determinism. It espouses that female sexual selection is driven almost exclusively by immutable external physical qualities, namely height and specific facial bone structures.
Right. Under the black pill philosophy, your personality, your kindness, your sense of humor, your shared interests, all of those intrinsic qualities are either completely ignored in the dating market or they actively cause rejection because they are viewed as weakness.
So it's a completely hopeless worldview.
It really is.
Yeah.
The early message boards attributed all social and sexual success to a small group of genetically gifted men they categorized as chads.
Right, the Chad meme.
Yeah. So Looksmaxxing wasn't originally about self-care. It was framed as a desperate survival strategy to adapt to a brutal, dominant standard of male beauty just to get basic social recognition.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Those original PSL forums are defunct. They don't exist anymore.
True.
So how does a rigidly pessimistic philosophy from defunct niche message boards suddenly become a viral mainstream trend for a whole new generation of teenagers?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the answer is the algorithm.
Ah, of course.
In the early 2020s, Looksmaxxing exploded on TikTok. At first, the platforms framed it very softly. You'd see videos about self-improvement, maybe some guys using self-deprecating humor about their glow-ups.
Yeah, pretty harmless stuff at first.
But algorithms are designed to maximize engagement, right? And extreme content drives the highest engagement.
It's a radicalization funnel.
Precisely. Think about the user journey. A 15-year-old boy feels a little insecure and searches for a basic skincare routine or a gym workout.
Which is totally normal.
Exactly. But the algorithm rewards that click with slightly more intense content. The next video is about jawline exercises. The video after that is explaining hunter eyes and Canthal tilts.
And then they're down the rabbit hole.
Before long, the algorithm is feeding him historical black pill content and extreme body modification forums. By the mid-2020s, the old black pill ideology surged right back into the mainstream.
Pushed by specific influencers, right?
Yeah, influencers like a popular Kick live streamer named Clavicular. He's been heavily linked to promoting both the extreme forms of hard maxing and the underlying black pill philosophy to massive audiences.
So the mechanics of the social media platforms effectively took a fringe, toxic ideology and mainstreamed it.
That's exactly what happened.
Now that we see how the algorithm has popularized these old forum concepts, we need to look at the actual, documented, real-world fallout of this ideology on the people practicing it, because the criticisms detailed in the research are severe.
Oh, absolutely.
Commentators and psychologists point out that rating individuals on a strict 1 to 8 scale without any concern for their overall humanity leads directly to devastating mental health outcomes. We are talking about skyrocketing rates of body dysmorphia and suicidal ideation.
And the internal hostility of the community itself is staggering. The research notes that on some of these forums, if a user is deemed below average on the PSL scale by his peers, he doesn't receive support. He is severely harassed. There are documented instances of below average users being explicitly told by the community to take their own lives.
That is just heartbreaking.
It is a remarkably hostile environment, even to the people actively trying to participate in it.
The research highlights insights from Jamila Rosdal, who is a senior lecturer and researcher at the Australian College of Applied Psychology.
Oh, her work on this is fascinating.
It really is. She wrote a piece for The Conversation where she argues that this trend actively converts vulnerable young men into incels via these algorithms. But she doesn't just blame the internet.
Right, she looks at the broader context.
Exactly. She points to real-world structural problems. She attributes the rise of this trend to an unstable economy, feelings of isolation, and an increase in young men struggling to forge meaningful real-world relationships.
Yeah.
Her argument is that when young men feel utterly powerless over their economic future or their loneliness, they desperately grab onto something they can control. And measuring the angle of your jaw is something you can control.
That connects seamlessly to the broader sociological critique, too. A study published in the National Library of Medicine argues that Looksmaxxing is fundamentally about promoting a hegemonic masculine gaze.
Let's break that down, because hegemonic masculinity is a pretty heavy academic term. What does that actually mean in practice?
It refers to a concept developed by sociologist R.W. Connell. Hegemonic masculinity is the idea that society promotes one ideal, dominant, and physically imposing way to be a man.
Like an invisible ladder of manhood.
Exactly. And the study argues that the Looksmaxxing community is entirely built around this male supremacy. It reinforces patriarchy not just by subjugating women, but by subjugating any man who doesn't fit this hyper-specific, dominant physical mold.
So it legitimizes a hierarchy where only the most physically aggressive, predatory-looking men deserve respect.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the severe moral objections raised by critics. Journalist Becca Rothfeld wrote a scathing piece for The New Yorker, criticizing the tier systems promoted by influencers like Clavicular.
Right, because that PSL scale is used to sort human beings into distinct categories.
Yes, and Clavicular uses terms like subhuman, normie, and Chad. Rothfeld points out that any framework that designates a living, breathing person as subhuman is morally bankrupt and just beneath contempt.
It's completely dehumanizing.
She also flags the casual, regular use of racial slurs within the community to enforce these beauty standards, and to really highlight how deeply absurd and disconnected from reality these metrics are, she points to an interview with Clavicular.
Oh, the Mother Teresa comment.
Yes, he is evaluating different famous figures, and he approvingly notes that Brad Pitt mogs, meaning physically dominates Mother Teresa.
I mean, it's the perfect encapsulation of the ideology's fatal flaw. When you apply a rating of physical predatory dominance to a historical figure known entirely for her selfless humanitarian work, the entire framework just collapses under its own absurdity.
Right.
You're trying to measure the value of a sunset using a stopwatch. It just doesn't work.
That's a great way of putting it.
Interestingly, the research also points out a very unexpected overlap in how different communities manipulate aesthetics. Journalist Grace Byron, writing for GQ, noted a salient overlap between Looksmaxxing and transness.
Really? How so?
Well, she reported that trans women have cheekily claimed to be the, quote, OG Looksmaxxers, end quote.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which highlights a fascinating point about how different marginalized or hyper-online communities learn to hack and manipulate strict physical aesthetics to navigate the world.
That is fascinating. So what does this all mean? After unpacking all of this, we have to ask, what is the actual outcome for the men participating in this?
Well, the research does acknowledge a paradox. It notes that some men involved in Looksmaxxing do report tangible benefits.
Sure, they get a haircut, they hit the gym.
Exactly, and they report getting a girlfriend or receiving positive affirmation from their peers. But here's the catch.
There's always a catch.
The research explicitly notes that this praise within the community is invariably mixed with harsh, relentless critique. It's a psychological trap.
Right, to keep them insecure.
Yes. The community rules are designed to maintain a common outlook where even the most successful members must always feel subordinate to the impossible masculine ideal.
It sounds like they're trying to win a game where the community rules are literally designed to ensure you always feel like you're losing. You log on seeking brotherhood and self-improvement, but you end up trapped in a space built on brutal rating-based humiliation.
And this raises an important question, synthesizing Jamila Rosdal's point about control perfectly. Wanting to look good, wanting to feel attractive and desired. I mean, these are fundamentally natural, healthy human desires.
Sure they are.
But when you try to solve the incredibly complex, often painful realities of human loneliness or economic anxiety by meticulously measuring the millimeter projection of your cheekbones, you are looking for a solution in the wrong dimension.
You're trying to fix an internal problem with the protractor.
Exactly. The tragedy of Looksmaxxing is that it offers a mathematical illusion of control over a world that is inherently unpredictable.
Well, we've covered massive ground today. We started in the relatively innocent realms of softmaxing, drinking water, going to the gym, taking care of your skin.
The normal stuff.
The normal stuff. And then we travel through the bizarre lexicon of mewing and mogging and that intense obsession with hunter eyes.
Yeah, hitting your face with a hammer.
Right, the bone smashing.
Yeah.
And we traced the dark history of the 1 to 8 PSL scale, from obscure 2010s manosphere boards right into the algorithmic explosion on modern TikTok. Finally, we arrived at the serious psychological and sociological implications of a heavily algorithmic, appearance-obsessed internet subculture.
And as we step away from this topic, here's a final thought I want you to mull over. If we are moving toward a culture where physical appearance is increasingly quantified, debated, and optimized like a rigid stock market value, where you are constantly rated on a scale of 1 to 8, what happens to our appreciation for the intrinsic, unmeasurable qualities of human connection?
Wow.
Empathy, humor, vulnerability, kindness. These are the things that actually sustain relationships, and they simply cannot be maxed.
That is the exact question we need to be asking. Because at the end of the day, you can't successfully rebuild a house if the architectural blueprint you're using was designed to make the roof cave in. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We love having you here as we cut through the noise, challenge the algorithms, and find the insights that actually matter. Until next time.